Hello and welcome to Julie Hall Designs and our Rock the Casbah Block of the Month quilt collection. The block that I'm going to show you today is block number 10. Block number 10 is a starburst style design. It includes applique and overstitching and also this beautiful detailed stitching here in the center of the sunburst that really does give a textural 3D effect. The quilting that is included in it, and I'm just trying to zoom in on that a little bit just to show you the detail, is just gorgeous, and it is a sunburst detail itself, so it just echoes perfectly with the quilt. I know you're going to enjoy this one. Let's get started. Okay, so you can see here I've got my poly mesh stabilizer and I've got my embroidery felt in the hoop, and I'm going to come through and I'm going to stitch colorway 1, which is going to hold down that embroiderer's felt onto the poly mesh stabilizer. I'm then going to come through and I want to trim away the excess embroiderer's felt around the hoop. The reason I want to do this is because I want the stability that the embroiderer's felt gives me, but I don't want any of the embroiderer's felt left in the seams, making the seams too bulky in the quilt. So, as I come through and I trim that excess away, and you can see that I'm using a rather large pair of curved tip scissors there, and these are the ones that basically I save for trimming away things like this. My small beautiful applique scissors don't seem to work for that. I can then place my 100% cotton fabric on top, and using the wash away thread still, so that's wash away thread on both colorways 1 and 2, stitch the 100% cotton on top of that block, making us ready to stitch. Wherever possible, I like to come through and starch my cotton before I put it on the block, just because I find it gives a better result. Now, colorway 3 is going to be stitching the fan design. And the fan design on my particular block, I've stitched with my deep pink colour. What I love about the way this stitches, and it's called a contour stitch, so it follows the shape that I'm stitching here, and that gives it a real dimension. You can see it's a lot deeper down the edge than it is at the wider part of the fan or the blade, and that really just helps to add definition to the design. I really find that this is one of my favourite blocks, although I've got a terrible habit of whichever one I'm working on currently is my favourite one. But just how simple this one is, the quilting that goes on it, everything about it just makes it a happy sort of a design. Now you will see that my stitching is happening quite quickly here. In real life, I'm stitching on about 500 or 600 stitches per minute, and this quilt block took me 1 hour and 10 minutes to create. I've sped it up because otherwise it could be an incredibly boring thing to watch. So once that first colorway is done, we're going to move on to colorway number 4 now, which is going to show us where to put our applique fabric down. Take your applique fabric, making sure it's all smooth, and lay it down and stitch colorway 5 and then colorway 6, because we need to cut out around that star shape as well. This is where you want to be using very small, sharp, curved tip scissors. And I love my squizzes for this. They are just perfect for cutting around these applique objects. Once I've done that, I'm going to return the hoop to the machine, and I'm going to stitch colorway 7, which is going to do all of the satin stitch around our applique. Now, the satin stitch that I do is well underlaid, and the reason that I do outlining and underlay on even a satin stitch is simply because it gives you a better result all over. And I'm all about the result that we're going to get in the end. This is the medium teal thread that I'm using now, and it's the medium teal fabric as well. Now, as we've previously discussed with these blocks, they come in 5 different sizes, between 5 inches and 9 inches wide, depending on which size you use, and you do get all of the sizes in the project. Depends on what size quilt you make, but you can always multiply the number of blocks that you do. And if you choose to multiply those blocks, swap out the colours and mix it up just to make it a little bit of a different sort of a project. And you can see now that I'm coming around, and as well as doing underlay, I do an outline stitch around every satin object that I do, just to give that object a little bit more definition. And now we're coming to the inside, and once again we're going to do the same thing. So it's going to do the underlay, and then it's going to come through and satin stitch around. Now, if you ever find that your satin stitch is pulling a little bit, or it's not totally covering your applique, generally that means you've got a tension problem. And what you need to do is look at adjusting the tension on your bobbin case. Normally it would mean that it was too tight, so you want to just infinitesimally change the tension of the bobbin case. And the last time I got my glasses, or I got a new prescription of glasses, I was given a glasses screwdriver set. And it is the perfect little screwdriver for putting in your sewing kit and adjusting your the screws on your sewing machine. It's just the perfect one for having around. Okay, so now that we've done that stitching, we're now going to move on, and we are going to thread the hoop with the wine coloured thread, or whatever thread it is that you're going to use for the branches or the leaves coming around your block. And these are a little bit satin stitchy sort of a thing. Now the reason I do my my satin stitching to secure the applique fabric first before I do this decorative stitching is because decorative stitching could always have the ability of sucking that fabric in and moving it a little bit, and we want it to be already satin stitched so that it has less, so that the applique fabric has less chance of moving as we are stitching. Now, whilst all this stitching is going on, it is a perfect time to get your fabrics ready for backing. And in this case, we need our wadding fabric, and I'm just using a polyester wadding that I happen to have in my stash, and I'm using a backing fabric that I happen to have in the stash as well. I've done well out of my stash this year. Colorway number 9 is going to come through and do a circle around the inside of our starburst, and then we are going to stitch colorway 10 to hold that applique fabric down. Once we've done that, we're going to trim away the excess applique fabric. Now my machine has the ability to move the hoop forward. I'm using the Janome 15,000, and so far as I'm aware, all of the Janomes from the 10,001, which came out in 2001, through to the 15,000 have the ability to do that. And then I'll move the hoop back and I can do my satin stitching to finish off the applique of this block. And of course I'm using my dark teal fabric and thread here. Now I'm going to come over to my we're up to the wadding. So I'm going to remove the hoop from the machine. Excuse my arm there. Flip it over, and what I want to do is put on the wadding. I'm then going to stitch colorway 12 before I trim away the excess wadding, and you can see I've got a hell of a lot of there to trim away. That is just because I'd pre-cut this for some other projects that didn't go ahead, so I'm using up what I've got. Once I've trimmed that away, I'm going to come through and put my pressed quilt backing on the back before I flip the hoop over and load it back into the machine and stitch colorway 13. Now 13 is just going to come through, and of course we are doing both colorway 12 and 13 with our wash away thread. And we'll come through and stitch that down. Now what you will find here is that the outline that you are doing now is going to be a couple of millimeters away, and you can see as I stitch here than the first outline that we stitched when we were laying down the 100% cotton. That is because the embroidery that we've done on the block has sucked that fabric in, and that's okay. That's why we're using wash away thread, because all of those threads are going to come out and you're not going to see them. Now I'm going to change over to my my white embroidery thread, which is what I'm using for my quilting, and I'm going to begin the last colorway, which for this block is colorway 14, which is going to create the quilting design. And the quilting design that I'm using in this block is the sunflower quilt design, and I really do think it is just a gorgeous little quilt design, and it is just sunshines. Now you get the block of this as part of your collection, which you can use however you want. You also get the continuous quilting version of this block. So lots and lots of things that you have the opportunity to do with this particular design. Now, if you do not like quilt as you go and you want to use the blocks and then put your quilt together at the end, that is totally fine. What you would do is you would stop the project or the block after the applique and before you put your backing fabrics on. You can then join your blocks together and quilt them or do whatever you wish with them. And that's great just in case you want to do something like do a table runner, or whatever it is that you personally wanted to do with your blocks. And we're coming up on the end of our quilting here, so just a tiny little bit more to go. And let's see what we end up with. Okay, And here you can see our finished block. You can see the detail that this sunburst stitching gives off with just having the deeper stitching near the edge. It really does add definition to the block and give a 3D effect. We've got our applique in the zigzag, and then the beautiful vine stitching coming around just to finish it off. The quilting pattern, and as you know, you get the quilting pattern as both a block by itself and as a continuous line design as well. So this was block 10 in the Rock the Casbah, which is part of the 3rd month's collection. I do hope you have enjoyed this block. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to send them to me at sales@JulieHallDesigns. Until next time, have a stitching day. Bye.